We'd like to welcome everyone to our work session today. And for the first hour, we'll be reviewing our general plan goals and just discussing refining those as a council. So I'd like to welcome everyone tonight. And we will begin with looking at the general plan goals one by one with Mr. Astorga. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity today to go over the drafted general plan goals. As we start this discussion, we need to go over the vision statement that was originally drafted by our consultant, Logan Simpson Design, in a way that he interviewed various folks. They interviewed various folks, I should say, including your group, the Planning Commission, the Steering Committee meeting, and approximately 20 others. And from those interviews, we started creating a vision statement, which was a big task that the Steering Committee had. And I could recall about twice in which the vision statement was brought to the Planning Commission City Council joint meeting, and this is the result of that final draft. And I will read it. It's quickly, and it's up on the screen. Bountiful provides a high quality of life for residents with a vibrant Main Street, abundant recreation opportunities, an array of housing options, and locally focused retail. Bountiful is a safe, family-friendly, and welcoming community that is at the anchor of South Davis County. So this became the vision statement. And the reason that we started with this, or the consultant started, is to set the tone for the remaining guiding principles, which are as following. Bountiful is a welcoming community built for everyone, regardless of age or income. Bountiful is a business-friendly community that serves the community with a variety of locally focused services, shopping, and entertainment options. Bountiful is a connected community with complete networks for pedestrians, bicycles, transit, and vehicles. Bountiful is an active community with diverse outdoor recreational opportunities and access to our mountain backyard. Bountiful is an efficient and resilient community with effective utilities and robust services. And finally, Bountiful is a friendly community with lively community events and neighborly connections. In moving forward with the draft, and we have included that on page 6 of your packets, staff has had an opportunity to fine-tune these specific goals that have been divided into these 6 categories that were derived from the guiding principles that were derived from the vision statement. So this is exactly as the mayor mentioned today. This is exactly what we want to do tonight, is going over the 6 sections as we have taken an opportunity internally as staff to fine-tune these goals, and we want to talk about them one by one to see if we need to change anything, etc. So let's start with a welcoming community. Goal 1. Mayor, did you want to? I'll be more than happy to guide this discussion, and obviously it would be great if we could take one at a time and then we move on to the next section.
I think that sounds perfect. If you're willing to guide the discussion, we'll just look at them one by one and share any input as we go.
There you go.
Thanks.
So goal 1, encourage the protection and creation of welcoming and attractive neighborhoods. Any questions or any comments regarding this first goal under a welcoming community?
So when I'm looking at this, I like the protection and creation of welcoming and attractive neighborhoods. And I'm wondering if there's an element that we would want to add that has something to do with maintenance, encouraging the protection, maintenance, and creation, or something like that, just to somehow incorporate the idea of, first of all, residents maintaining their own properties, but also the city maintaining its infrastructure. So I don't know, I just wondered if we wanted to include the idea of maintenance somewhere in this concept.
Mayor, down under, if I could jump
Sure,
in.
please.
Down under an efficient and resilient community, there's an item that says maintain existing infrastructure and carefully consider benefits versus costs.
Yeah, so that, you're right, that's a good place where that is mentioned, but I guess just in terms of our own, of property owners, like taking pride in their own properties and maintaining them. Just a thought, I don't know that we need to add it. Another thing that I kind of think goes along in this, a welcoming community realm is safety, because you're gonna feel more welcome if it's safe. And so I don't know if we would want to add an element about, encouraging safe, welcoming, safe and attractive neighborhoods or something like that, but any thoughts anyone has? I also think that we don't need to be too wordy or add too much, so it doesn't hurt my feelings if you guys don't think that we need to add those elements, but
If I may share, Mayor?
please, yeah.
These are the goals of the guiding principles, which is intended to have sub-goals, or I think the consultant is calling them action items, where we would get slightly more specific. So we can take exactly what you're indicating regarding a safe community and also regarding the maintenance factor, even though it might be included in another section, and we can make sure that we include that as a specific action item regarding goal number 1, for example.
I think, for example, in goal number 1, it does imply maintenance when it's saying to encourage the protection. To me, that implies maintenance. So I feel like that's fine. And maybe we don't need to mention safety either, but I just think that, obviously safety is an important part of a welcoming community, so,
Mayor, could I
Yes.
suggest a word
sure.
in the place of protection, maybe preservation,
I like that.
something like that?
Yeah. That's really, I like that. I think that encapsulates both protection and maintenance. So I don't know what other council members think about that idea.
I think that is a really good word that Lloyd has suggested, that I think gets at what I was hearing you describe.
Yeah.
I guess the question is do we need, to me, preservation has an element of protection included in it. It
So we
also
could-
has an element of maintenance, right? Because in
Right.
order to preserve something, you protect it and you restore it and keep up its condition.
So I think it could replace the word, it could replace it, protection, because I think it implies that.
Yes, so that's what I was thinking. I like the word preservation more than protect, and I think it embraces the sentiment you were wanting to wrap into that goal.
Yeah. That's good. Any other thoughts on a welcoming community from council members? Any of these 4 goals?
I have an idea that's not listed, and this might not be the best place for it, but part of the general plan, I picture that we better define our identity and what we want to be. And I think a gateway or entry into our city would be applicable and helpful, and maybe we don't put it here, but I'd like to somehow create some sort of, when people come into Bountiful, they know they're here, they've arrived, and it supports what we want Bountiful to be.
I like that idea, how often when you go into towns, there's signage that says welcome to, just so you're clear that you've come into the city boundaries and then that welcoming feel. So whether or not it's a part of these 4 goals, I like the idea of having something like that helps people know they're here and welcome.
We have a goal 2 under friendly community. enhance community identity by improving the appeal of key urban areas. If you're on page 4, we
Yeah,
do recognize that.
so that does seem like that falls within that.
And we do understand that some of these could live in different areas.
Crossover and be
Right,
in
you said it
multiple-
better, with having a crossover.
Sure, that's great. What other thoughts do you have, council members? Any other thoughts about a welcoming community?
Did I fall asleep and we missed the other 3 of the 4 goals? Or did we cover
We're-
the 4?
We're just
we
talking
haven't.
about,
Oh, okay.
yeah, we're talking
So we're
about
talking
any
about
of the
number
4 goals, right? Under
Right,
welcoming
right. So
community.
we could move on. I think we have consensus on that first goal. Moving on to goal 2, support development of diverse housing choices. Any
like
thoughts
that.
on that?
I like that.
Yeah,
Hey, kind of a tangent to that. Is it appropriate in a general plan to have kind of a preamble that talks about all of the things that are great about Bountiful first? And kind of lays spells out our identity and what our, not necessarily traditions are, but what works well in the city? And then sets goals for a vision statement.
Sure. The question is, yes, it is. It is appropriate. It is not inappropriate to have some sort of statement that lays a foundation. I think that's what you're implying.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that is because as we move from maybe such a preamble, if I can use that word, into a vision statement, we have the background or the foundation that we're hoping to build upon as we set these goals and maybe action items towards a revised general plan. It gives context to it. So I'll stop derailing the conversation about these goals now, and if it is appropriate, I think it'd be great if we had one.
There was some discussion, not specifically about the preamble, but in going back to that vision statement, I have it up on the screen, and it's also on the staff report. That's where the anchor of South Davis County came from. In that we do recognize that based on the services that we provide to other cities, we do identify as such. So I believe you're implying that we needed to, you're considering adding a little bit more than it's written in the vision statement as a preamble of what makes Bountiful great. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, but not tonight.
Gotcha. So we'll add that to the to-do list, to add a section or a page with a preamble about what is good about Bountiful currently and historically.
Thank you.
May I add, going back to goal 2, maybe a comment? We took out support development of missing middle housing choices intentionally, but it can certainly go back in. And the reason was, in 15 years, maybe that's not the piece that's missing anymore. Maybe it's some other diverse housing choice that we don't have. But we don't have a strong opinion if, for example, if the council wanted that to say support development of missing middle housing choices, that's fine. That just seemed a little limiting and could be addressed in a subset goal of goals as we further define what diverse means to Bountiful. So that was just an intentional choice, but maybe one worth a little bit of discussion.
So I liked the change, in part because I don't think 10 or 15 years down the road, the same buzzwords are going to be in popular use.
You're absolutely right.
And I feel that's what that is right now,
It is. You're absolutely right in that.
so.
but diverse really captures everything.
Yeah.
We do want to support development of diverse options, so I like that.
If goals 2 is okay with you, then we'll move on to goal 3. Consider opportunities that combine additional housing with effective transit service.
Well, that one's certainly aspirational. Here's hoping the BRT comes someday.
Also, I do think, though, that we really are active in doing that as we're looking at Renaissance and as that is our current BRT place.
And maybe one more comment on that one. That's quite a change from the original recommendation by the consultants, which kind of assumed the statement as I read it, that all transit service is created equal, and therefore, if there's a transit line, then that means there should be reduced parking because you don't need it as much, et cetera. But I think we all know that not all transit service is created equal. A line that is a commuter line that just goes to Salt Lake is not going to provide the same sort of benefit to a resident that a line that provides them access to grocery and other places. And so the idea here is that you can't just default that just because there's transit, there should be additional housing. What we're trying to do is encourage both to work together and to look for opportunities where we can do that.
Thanks. Yeah. Any other thoughts on goal 3?
I think Gary's perspective that he just shared is important because my somewhat sarcastic comment about the fact that I doubt the BRT is coming. I don't want us to have a goal that hangs out there where we control a minority of its ability to come into fruition rather than the vast majority of its ability to come into fruition. So I'd like its change that, when it comes, if it comes, then we have the goal that we're going to use that to create housing that matches our ability to pair it with that type of a transit service. But since the majority of its ability to come into existence as a transit opportunity is not ours, that we're not overemphasizing that as like this black eye in our goals.
Can I ask a rhetorical question, maybe? Does addressing BRT in our general plan help encourage it?
Are you trying to manifest it to exist?
Kind of, yeah.
Is it on our vision board?
I know it's been in the plans for quite a while by UTA, and I know it hasn't happened, and there's concerns with our neighboring cities, but I hate to jump on their wagon. When it's a good thing and it's good for our community and our residents.
Can I make a comment? I think that if we keep doing what we're doing, helping to attract or encourage development of more housing along the potential line, that will help us manifest that into existence. And if it doesn't, and it's just a bus line, but there are more and more residents that live on that bus line and utilize that bus line, I think that gives us a better chance of bringing another option at some point in the future. I think that we're doing the responsible thing in encouraging and allowing additional housing, dense housing along that potential route now. So
I agree with that as well.
Yeah. Good, thanks. Any other thoughts? Goal 3?
So moving on to goal 4, Mayor, we have support efforts to develop more affordable housing options, which was changing what should be the role of the city from what was originally, or not originally, but what was drafted at one point. How do you feel about that goal?
I like it, how it's stated.
how is it, what is, oh, I do not have the red line.
The wording changed from create opportunities to support efforts.
I almost want to find a qualifier to put between support and efforts, because I certainly don't want to support all efforts to develop more affordable housing options. Yeah, but I think that good efforts ought to be supported.
How about if we add in key areas at the end?
So support efforts to develop more affordable housing options in key areas.
I think that's a little tricky because then it begs the next question, which is what are the key areas? And then I think that's kind of like a little hanging chat out there that, are we willing to define that? I
Well, we
think
are
that's
defining it, right, as part of our process. We're looking at,
key areas.
right, I mean, we're identifying what we believe to be the best areas for higher density in our general plan.
Not to mention the fact that, again, over time, what is a key area today may change, and that's okay too. A general plan should be a living document. But let's, for example, assume that we have a massive increase in transit options east-west that don't exist now. That could lead to better locations for affordable housing that don't exist right now. I mean, that's just one example, but anyway, we're happy to entertain anything that you all want to do to further define this or leave it alone.
And if I may comment, the purpose of the general plan, at its advisory regarding land use decisions, is that it sets up these goals and action items, but the implementation of the plan comes later through the zoning code. The zoning, it serves a twofold purpose. One is the rules and orders for development of the city, as long as it starts to implement the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. And then, so in just giving you a quick timeline, we go through this general plan process, then we have to implement the plan by changing our zoning code. And then the third and final, and it may be the longer step, we need to give time for developers or property owners to react to it, to see how it moves forward. Gary and I, and even the consultant, cannot guess and say this is exactly what's going to happen based on these goals, policies, and even the implementation as the market conditions change. And that's why I echo what Mr. Hill just said. That's why this becomes a living document that needs to be amended and revisited from time to time.
What would the council think of adding prudent in between support and efforts? Support prudent efforts to develop affordable housing options. Unnecessary?
I personally just like how it is drafted because I think council action is supported by our planning commission and on the advice of our planning department, it is prudent. I don't think, and I think just leaving it as it is the most, gives the most flexibility in the future.
I kind of agree with that. I don't know if prudent adds much other than subjective.
I'm okay with it as is.
Okay.
Oh, heavens.
I appreciate the idea. I mean, the hard part is we're drafting something that we want to stand on its own for several years, and qualifying it with all efforts, some efforts, prudent efforts, sound efforts, like, those all make sense depending on what context or who sits in seats. later, but we just, I don't know. We'll have to just trust, I think, in the people that sit in the seats whenever a thoughtful, prudent, sound, reasonable, well-funded idea presents.
Okay. So everybody's okay with it as it is?
Yes.
All right, moving on to a business-friendly community. Goal 1, spark investment and development in downtown through strategic infrastructure improvements.
I'm okay with that.
I like it.
It almost sounds like an action item. But I like it.
We'll move on to the next one. Encourage the growth of high-quality local businesses.
Pardon me, Francisco, I have just a comment about goal number 1.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're talking about, I know that this has been mentioned in work sessions and joint sessions with Planning Commission, and I don't see other here in another way where I feel like, oh, that's reflected in another one of these goals. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a little bit limiting to just say downtown, because that implies the downtown district or downtown. I don't know if we're talking about just the downtown zone, the Main Street downtown zone, that 2-block wide, 9-block long area. And if we are, then I feel like we should define that. But I think kind of to Jesse's point is that he made a little earlier is some of maybe the other gateway zones into our city, like 500 South. I think that is, this seems to kind of be a little exclusive of that, and I would love to see that included, where we can also consider 500 South for investment and development through strategic infrastructure improvements. I would, since it's work session, I would love to just have a conversation about that if we can, Mayor. Because I think, while I know we've all expressed over the years and in meetings how important the downtown district is, downtown zone, it is very small in comparison to the rest of the city, and important and definitely worthy of this type of investment, development, infrastructure improvements. But I think 500 South is the primary gateway, commercial gateway. Also, when we're talking about these business-friendly community goals.
Yeah, you raise a good point. I mean, I feel like downtown is the heart. Main Street is the heart, I think, in some ways. But, 5 South is very visible. 5th South, the square on 2600. I mean, there are a lot of little areas that we have that we want to encourage and develop and nurture. So, it's a good point. And it's tricky because in some ways we have some specific things that we know are coming down the pike, like the planter boxes on Main Street, for example. We know that we're planning to do some, we have things in our plans to do there. And so I think that that's part of why it's the focus, it's named as the focus here, but any other thoughts?
So I agree. I think that's a good point. So would it work if we just took out in downtown, spark investment and development through strategic infrastructure improvements? Would that be broad enough for the city?
I personally would like that if we did spark investment and business development, or the commercial development through strategic infrastructure improvements. And that's a little more broad and allows for, I mean, like to the mayor, what she said about the square, that's a perfect example of another area that has received some of this type of investment and infrastructure improvements, and it is just really a hive of activity, commercial activity. It's really, in my opinion, a real success story in Bountiful, and I think that's a great model, and so I love that, Millie.
So I like the discussion and the ideas in it, but I wonder if we need a fourth goal, because downtown and Main Street is a unique standalone. And keeping a traditional Main Street vibrant and thriving is a real challenge, and something that we've agreed and our community agrees is important to have as an extra note of emphasis. And so to me, it would deserve its own goal because of that significance of being the heart of the community. The other commercial streets or nodes that we have are also important, and growing them and supporting them, and helping with their appeal and aesthetics is also gateways or important interfaces of other people with our community is important as well. But to me they're aligned goals, but they're slightly different goals. And so my suggestion would be that what we're talking about with these other areas would maybe be goal number 4 that we would want to write up and incorporate, because they're aligned missions, but they're slightly different missions to me.
I support those comments, and Cecily, you mentioned it, our other areas that aren't mentioned here, which is very valid. I think Fifth South and, Fifth West, and we've got high traffic areas that are great opportunities for added development and success of businesses. But our downtown is key. We have so many events down there, and there's been so much investment by the city and others on our Main Street that I think that we've got to finish that effort. And so I like keeping downtown identified there, but completely support adding another goal of those other areas as well.
I like that. Do you think, council members, do you think that in downtown addresses it, or is it more specific to Main Street?
I'm comfortable with the word downtown.
Downtown, okay. And then we'd like,
I don't want to speak for everybody, but that I am.
and then we'd like to address in a 4th goal, something that's more citywide, that speaks to commercial development and,
Yeah.
Another idea is we could add some additional language to goal 2, that, because encourage the growth of high-quality local businesses is a citywide goal. It's a downtown goal and a citywide goal, but maybe there's some additional ways that we can capture some of these other ideas that have been expressed to enhance goal 2.
I'd just maybe like to read goal 3, I feel like it doesn't identify any other area by name, but it is talking about commercial development and trying to see those things be successful, and I think that goes for, Fifth South, Fifth West, but we can identify those by name as well, if that's helpful.
What if goal 2 said something like encourage the growth of high-quality local businesses in entry corridors and other commercial nodes?
I like that. I think that goal 1 just has an imperative to its language, and I would love to have some of that type of language where it's like the sparking investment, and it seems very purposeful, the language, like it's a high, it seems more than encouraging. So I would love to have some of that language because, and it could, I don't even,
It's a good
but I do
point.
like specifying the entry corridors and the other commercial nodes. I think we all kind of are aware of what those are, where they are. But I think that development and investment and being strategic, I think those qualifying words matter in these goals.
For what it's worth, again, look, maybe going back to what the intent was through the steering committees and those discussions, from what I was able to glean, the reason that downtown is mentioned as sparking investment and development is because we have a dedicated funding source for that through the RDA. And so we have the ability in the downtown area to do that. Throughout the rest of town, not so much unless the council chooses to specifically use taxpayer funds to spark investment. So I think this was a recognition of limited resources and as well as where the dollars that are being generated can be spent downtown. We don't have that same ability through the rest of town. But what we can do is be purposeful about our economic development efforts in the rest of town too. We just don't have the same cash to spend.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, then I think we could put those words in goal number 2, encourage growth, or the economic development. I mean, encourage economic development resulting in high-quality businesses. Because just saying encourage the growth, I just feel like nobody really knows what that means. I think when we say economic development, it means, hey, we're going to be out there promoting our city. Like, hey, this is a great place to do business. If you thought about Fifth South, being a little more proactive, I think, instead of just the growth, putting economic development there. And it allows, again, in my opinion, a little more flexibility in the future.
Any other thoughts?
I think it's fun when you guys all turn and look this way because I've been turning and looking at that screen.
No, we're looking for you to lead us out, Kay.
Yeah, that's what I was getting worried about. This is, I think the discussion we're having is great, and it's the discussion we want to have. And the hard part is how to distill it into something that is flexible enough to stand for a decade, right? Or two. And with resources and staffing and the control we have and, acknowledging the control we do not have and market forces and all of those things. And so, the words matter and they have to be intentional in the way we use them to wring kind of the most staying power and all of those things out of them. I like the additions to goal 2. I think they work. I'm not sure how to add more without being too prescriptive. But I agree with with the discussion we've been having about these other corridors and nodes and that they are important and their character and their development and their support is important. So,
Yeah, I really like that you brought it up, that we are interested citywide in economic development. And so I think, in my mind, entry corridors and other commercial nodes helps to, blanket the city and say, we really do want high-quality local businesses citywide. We want to encourage that. But we are limited, with RDA funds and stuff, so.
Just acknowledging our limited resources, I think when we put an economic development lens on Goal 2, then it says we're going to put some focus there. So that's the reason I would like to have the economic development language, because it says we're going to actually put a little bit of focus. I'm not saying putting all the focus. I'm not going to be prescriptive and say put 25% of the focus, but it says, to me, it says we're going to put some focus on this. It's going to be through the lens of economic development. And so
Is this
That's-
manifest it?
it's a
Is
manifest.
it, are you
It's
manifesting a
manifest.
BRT?
I have a suggestion. Encourage the growth of high-quality local businesses through economic development of entry corridors and other commercial nodes.
Sold.
So it's basically exactly what Cecily said. I just moved the words.
Economic development.
Of entry corridors. And again, we don't,
I'm good. Thank you. I like that.
Sounds good.
I agree that it adds an element of intention, of being intentional
Yeah,
in those areas.
that's good, thank you. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Goal 2? Thank you.
All right, moving on to Goal 3. Keep land use regulation at a minimum to encourage commercial development.
Amen.
So I agree with the statement of Goal 3. I wonder if we could phrase it in a way that doesn't feel to the lay reader like it's a free-for-all. Because I think it has a potential to be read that way, that we have like a laissez-faire attitude toward regulation. I don't have any words right at this moment to suggest. I'm sure that Gary is going to come through in a clutch with a suggestion of reordering what I've just said, but the opening of keep land use regulation amendment just feels like a weird way to phrase the overall goal that we're trying to get at.
I share that, and when I first read that, I had similar thoughts, like, thinking of our downtown, I think we do want to maintain what we've started and in a cohesive fashion, and this kind of says we don't necessarily care about that. I don't know how we carry that out in this simplified sentence structure, especially with the limited, we're limited on how our design standards, but somehow we've got to maintain that to some degree.
Yeah, we want low burdens. We want a light touch from government. We want, that's what we mean, right? Those are the things we want, but I just feel like there's probably a way to say it that doesn't feel like we've kind of indicated that we're not going to regulate things or engage.
See, when I read that, I felt like that was in harmony with what we've done with parking adjustments in the downtown area, is that we're trying to remove burdensome regulation that prohibits that kind of development.
Agree. Do we need that goal listed here?
I think you have to keep it as a reminder that we are,
Okay.
the principle that is important to apply is a light touch of government, as a low burden. I think it's North Rift over there that always says that it doesn't take much for government to become oppressive. And that's the sentiment I think we are aiming for in Goal 3, and what I agree with.
I agree. I guess that it does, it's a reminder for future councils.
If we're manifesting things, we have to manifest it for the future, to remember to
It's true.
keep that without making it feel like it's a don't tread on me flag, which is, I think, a little too far.
I believe that the objectives or the actions of the goals where we get more specificity in telling the reader what we mean by having this goal. So on this one, I would simply suggest stay tuned till we bring you those action items to make sure that we hit the intent of this goal.
I actually appreciate, as a business owner, I appreciate the way it's written, because we're in a situation where we can't put up signage on our property because we're 2 feet shy of the frontage needed, which I completely understand and I appreciate that. But it's kind of frustrating when you're a business owner and there's certain things that you can and can't do. And obviously those standards are there. But I think to make it these goals, a business-friendly community, I think a business owner would appreciate that we're at least open to having, as you said, a light touch as far as government regulations are concerned. So I personally like the way it is written and think it's appealing for development, so.
I think it's fine. I like it.
But I understand where you're coming from.
I'm okay to move forward and leave it as is.
I just want to, I do want to acknowledge, I agree that you don't want it to look like it's free-for-all. And I just been sitting here thinking about like all the qualifying things we could put here, right? And I think it really is, like, we have to put a lot of trust in people who sit in these seats 8 years down the road and that 10 years down the road, and that they're looking at the same type of things that we are, that like we want intentional growth. I don't know. I mean, Jesse, you referenced standards and things like that, and it's a question for Francisco. Where is the appropriate place for things if it's something we incorporate, like, I don't know if you're referencing things like design standards or when you made your comment earlier, but where, I mean, I'm just going to reference something we'll be seeing later in this evening, a new business that's coming to 200 West, and I'm happy, thrilled that this non-productive piece of property is going to be, you know, now a vibrant business, and I think that's a great thing for the city. They're choosing to come to Bountiful, and that's something to celebrate. And but I know some people in the area were concerned about the design standards or the like neighbors, and so I don't know, and like where that's an appropriate thing to kind of talk about. Is that further, or if we, I mean, that's kind of a ...
Yeah,
question.
the design aspect, or I should say aesthetic, would be included in a welcoming community, the very first one. Creation of welcoming, actually, we changed it to the preservation and creation of welcoming and attractive neighborhoods. We didn't mean to do that specifically for residential uses only. So that would be the umbrella or the area where we would maintain Main Street, looking with that higher quality of material or aesthetic component. We can certainly play around with this, council, as you see fit, but that's where it would currently fall under that aesthetic importance.
And I agree that if the council wants to go down a route of developing design standards, that would be more as a strategy under one of the goals. So, you know, to be determined. And that's going to be a good policy discussion. There are cities that have they have design standards for residential as well as for commercial. You know, there's a lot of opinion about whether or not that makes housing more expensive, for example. So if we do design standards, there will be a good discussion about where and how much, and is it in keeping with keeping land use regulation at a minimum, but still having something, right? So more to come, more to come.
Okay, this is not gonna be perfect, but I've been noodling on a way I would rephrase it. Encourage land use regulation application be applied to businesses in ways that have the most limited impact. It needs more wordsmithing, but
Read that one.
I don't know if I can, I was doing it on the fly. I've crossed it out several times. Encourage land use regulations. Land use regulations to be applied to businesses in ways to limit impacts. I don't think I repeated it the same way twice, because I've been playing with the words.
I got the first,
To limit impacts.
thank you, Gary.
I'm looking over here, Kate, to not put pressure on you.
Thank you. I'm looking at you two for leadership. And because everyone talking's on that side. I think I still prefer the first draft.
I appreciate where you were going, but I still think I prefer the first as it was written.
I think so too. Any other thoughts from anyone?
Gary, can you add those up and divide by 2 and make a new statement at some point?
And use a thesaurus, please.
How about this? How about you,
I can keep playing with it.
we'll keep the notes, and we'll see if we can come up with something a little bit better. And, I mean, we're not voting on anything tonight, right? We'll be able to come back with something, so.
Good call.
How was that for a punt?
Mhm.
Okay.
Should we move on to the next section?
Yeah.
So moving on to section 3, a connected community. Goal 1, balance travel modes to move people safely and efficiently throughout the city. Thoughts on this first one?
Could we say considering multiple modes of transit?
So on goal 3, it seems like it's kind of
Oh.
delving into that realm.
Right, true.
And I would say also on this one, travel modes, we mean it, all travel modes. It's not intended to be for one specific mode of transportation.
So really what that's getting at is that we're providing the right kind of infrastructure for different modes.
And maybe a commentary, especially if in comparison with how this one was originally written. The goal is to move people through the community safely and efficiently. And vehicular transportation isn't evil. A lot of these are written as though cars are evil. A lot of us have to use cars. In fact, almost everybody here. And so rather than de-emphasizing cars, it seemed to make more sense that what we're trying to do is just move people safely and efficiently, regardless of your travel mode. That means some areas we're going to prioritize vehicles over pedestrians, like a freeway. We don't have any freeways in town, but that's kind of the intention. But where we can accommodate everything, we should, and where we need to emphasize non-vehicular travel, we will.
Yeah, I like the spirit of that. Even our own Jessie Bell, who's a cyclist, said that there are some places that aren't ideal for bike lanes, for example, and so just having that balance, understanding there are some places where we definitely want bike lanes, and then other places where we are okay to emphasize car traffic that we all need.
Maybe a kudos, little brief comment about Francisco's. He and I were talking about this, but when you think about Bountiful, with the exception of maybe the areas that we annexed from the county, we are extremely walkable. We have sidewalks nearly everywhere in town. That's not necessarily the case in some of the areas where planners who are looking at urban settings are looking at travel modes. We are really pretty effectively safe and have multiple travel modes. Also, we have designed our road system to move people efficiently through and to minimize travel impacts through neighborhoods. That's why we have arterials. Doesn't mean every arterial is going to be perfectly comfortable to every pedestrian, but what it does mean is that we have less traffic through residential neighborhoods because of wise vehicular travel planning. So, I think there are a lot of, going back to maybe Richard's point, there are a lot of things we did really well, we've done really well over the years. We don't want to lose track of that either. We would hate to take a step back and accidentally make our residential neighborhoods less pedestrian and bike friendly because we are reducing traffic in major thoroughfares that is better suited for them than, say, Mill Creek Drive or something.
Carrie, so one question I have or concern about this is, if the multiple modes of travel in Gold 1 and the safe and efficient, that's critical. But something I hear a lot from people, and we do have a lot of people who commute by bike. They either commute, to their job all the way on a bike, or they're walking to a transit stop, or they're trying to get over to the other side of the freeway to access Front Runner. And one thing I hear is people are not so much concerned about which access point it's going to be that is going to be prioritized for the east-west route for active transportation. It's just like, will there be one? And so to me, this connected community, because we don't have, and I could be wrong, but I don't think we have that prioritized or specified route for commuters to kind of do that east-west connection. Or not, they don't even have to be commuters, but a lot of people do commute on, out, not in a car. And so, I don't know, I would love to see something in the connected community where we address prioritizing some active transportation routes, especially east-west.
Do you think that goal 2, because I think that speaks to it, that it's enhancing access and connectivity for cyclists, pedestrians. I like that that's there.
Yeah, I do. I think that does address it, but I think I think we need to kind of maybe talk about, are we going to prioritize certain routes, or especially, or even just address the need to really enhance that east-west connectivity? And it could, maybe goal 2 is the place to put that, or goal 1. And I even am looking at goal 3 down in efficient, resilient community, but that doesn't seem like, it seems like we're talking about transit more in this third one.
My opinion on that, for what it's worth, is that what you're talking is exactly what we would begin to define under goal 2 and 3. Mm-hmm. That's the intention of those 2 goals, is to recognize that there's more work to be done with non-motorized travel options, which could include identifying priority routes, It definitely would include the active transportation plan. So to me, that is still coming. And I've made a note that we make sure, and if the council's agreeable to that, that we include, as we get down to strategies under these goals, that we're doing what Cecily's talking about, because I think that's the intention.
Thanks.
We are running short on time since our legislators are here, and so what if we just wrap up with this goal, a connected community, for today's discussion? Any other thoughts on goal 1, 2, or 3 under a connected community?
Can we like come back to this one in the next work session? Because I think this is an important area of our plan, and I don't feel like we can do it justice while we're waiting, on our legislators. I don't want to shortchange that discussion either.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work, Francisco. This is really good discussion, really good direction for us.
It has been a combined effort from various internal staff members. You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, well, we will definitely be coming back to this document to finish the discussion, and we will invite our legislators. You ready? We're ready for you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Representative Ward, Senator Weiler, Representative Cutler, for being here tonight. We really appreciate your service. We appreciate your willingness to be our partners, to be our friends in this endeavor. So we wanted to invite you tonight, and we know that the legislature is close now, and so thanks for making time during this busy holiday season. And we just wanted to share a few of our things that are important as we're looking at the session, that we were hoping that you would keep on your radar, and that you would be willing to help us with the things that are really important to us as a city. So the first item that we want to address is talking about the IPA. So I know that you've all heard of this, you're all very aware of the situation there. And us, as one of the 23 member cities of IPA, 23 Utah cities had the vision to combine and create this entity that we really appreciate the way that it's able to give us reliable power at the best prices possible, and really helps us in our portfolio of what we need for our power needs. And so, as you know, there's been some different legislation aimed at IPP, and so we just want to make sure that we're on the same page and see if you're willing to help us in this effort with the legislation that's aimed at IPP. And so I'm wondering if Councilwoman Bradshaw, would you be willing to discuss some of those challenges?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, friends, for coming. And, this is an issue where you get to talk to me wearing day job hats and city council hats. I don't want to repeat information that you may already know, and I've had many detailed conversations with Representative Ward on the topics, and I appreciate his interest in that. We anticipate that there's going to be some legislation coming up this session, and I know the House caucus has made energy a significant priority. I don't know if the Senate caucus has met yet to discuss their priorities. There's definitely, I think, still some misunderstandings about the organization, and some maybe not a meeting of the minds of what what the municipal goals for the project are and what the state's goals might be. For the city of Bountiful, this project, I think, is best described as a battery. It's a battery food storage. It's a project that we haven't needed to draw on very often, but when we've needed it badly, and it has saved our residents significant dollar amounts. In 2022, as we faced challenges with our hydro sources not being available in the summer months, we drew on that resource. We called back that power, and I think Alan is going to tell me if I'm right when I say that I believe it saved our residents $600,000 versus buying power on the open market. Am I right on the number? 600? Yes. Good. So this ability to use it as somewhat of a battery where we're able to call it back when we need it and then avoid costs. We're not making money on it, but avoiding costs to our residents when we have other lower cost assets is important to us. And it's important to us going forward that it continue to be that resource. Some of the legislation that has been proposed that we're aware of has us concerned about taking control of the asset from cities. The IPA is governed by a 7-member board of directors made up entirely of Utah cities. Our power manager, Alan Johnson, happens to be one of those 7 board members. And control of that asset so that we use it in a way that is beneficial to the residents of Bountiful is important. So that would be one thing we'd ask you to kind of keep in mind is that change of that governance structure is likely to be problematic for us. It would be like, we have a car and we have the keys to drive it when we need to drive it to be efficient for our residents. And this would be, kind of taking our keys away and telling us we can ride in the back of our car when it suits other parties. So we think that would be problematic for us and how we would use the asset and how the other cities would use the asset. There are those, I don't know that any of you are among them, that seek that governance change in order to stay with a coal fuel source and not allow the project to go forward, the new repowering project to go forward. And if that project does not go forward, there are some real financial risks that the Bountiful is concerned about. Right now, there's about $1.6 billion in bonds that have been issued to build the project. And there's going to be another tranche of bonding that'll take it to just over $2 billion. Those bonds are intended to be repaid with the future sale of power. And if we're not able to complete the project, how will we repay those bonds if we don't have future power to sell? The environmental path for coal power, those that have the idea that we should just keep the coal units running, run up against various environmental regulations that aren't realistic. So this catching cities between federal regulations and the desires of some who may want to continue in that fuel vein jeopardize us in the ability to repay these bonds. Building any infrastructure project, whether it's a sewer plant or a power plant, are really expensive endeavors. So, and those bonds are always built on, those future fees to whoever, whether it's water treatment or power customers, to repay them. So jeopardizing a project at this critical juncture makes us nervous about our bonding authority and ability, and the remediation of the coal unit site, whether now or in the future, is also tied into the sale of future power. And so without a mechanism to do that, to fund that, we would be looking at our existing budgets and reserves. And so that's, I think, something we'd ask you to keep in mind, is that these proposals, and some of it I feel like is caught in a little bit of a culture war on fuel, they could have real repercussions that would roll back to our residents, whereas we are completely comfortable with the movement in the fuel source and have secured enough entitlement share in the new project that we feel Bountiful's residents will have access to reliable, dispatchable baseload power in this project. You know, we have Alan here as a resource to each of you if you have questions about Bountiful's resources, and now or any point in the session, so that when statements are made that we might not be making the right decisions to secure adequate load going forward, that you're able to not just ask us, but to ask, you know, someone who has 48 years in the power industry. Did I get that one right, Alan? It's only 47. And you know, his expertise in what our resources look like, how we plan for them, and his connection to what other cities have, I think, is just a really great resource. And so we'd ask you to be really mindful of that as you head into the session, that we're worried about impacts to this project and how it will affect our ability to have appropriately resource planned.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I
yes.
add a little bit?
I'd love to, yeah.
I don't have much insight in addition to what Councilmember Bradshaw has, but I would like to express to our elected folks here that, yes, Kate is also Holland and Hart Kate, and she represents folks that have similar interests as we do. I'd like you to know, though, that as a council, we're completely united behind what Kate has expressed today. And if Kate comes to you with an ask about IPA and about changes in governance and the killing of the Renewed project, she's not speaking necessarily for them. She's speaking for us, too. So if our elected leaders and representatives doubt that it's Bountiful City Council Kate, we're definitely behind her. Concerning the change of governance, and frankly, the idea of taking this